Before we begin, let me share something that might just be the spark you need. Have you ever dreamed of starting your own podcast? I was once just an armchair researcher, paranormal enthusiast, and one of the best secret true crime detectives that nobody ever heard of. But with a little bit of passion and the right tools, I've managed to reach listeners in over 75 countries, and if I can do it, so can you. Buzzsprout makes the entire process simple and seamless, from recording to sharing your voice with the world. They've got all the features you need to get your podcast up and running, and fast. Plus, here's a little incentive from me to help you get started. When you sign up for a paid membership using my link in the show notes, you'll get $20 in Buzzsprout credit to help you hit the ground running. Your stories deserve to be heard. So let's get it out there. Well, hello there. It is time for another episode of Monthly Tarot Magic here on When Walls Can Talk, the podcast. My name is Jeremy Haig. I'm the host and creator, and I'm also the witch behind When Walls Can Talk Tarot. I'm starting to kind of split those into two different businesses because, and I'll talk about that in a few and kind of let you in a little bit on what's going on and my mindset and my business plan and all that, since most of you have been with me from the beginning and are some of my biggest supporters and fans, so thank you. And what I do here on Monthly Tarot Magic is release about an hour-long, 45 minutes to an hour-long collective reading for the month ahead. And it's kind of my gift to my listeners, a gift to my supporters who have given so much to me. I like to give something back. And I like to use this a little bit as kind of an energetic forecast for the month ahead, and pull some cards to give us a little bit more clarity around action items and steps that we can take to maximize the opportunity of the month ahead. Some housekeeping stuff. First and foremost, I have my first pumpkin coffee of the season. I am happy as a clam, especially because so much of the reading that I'm going to talk about today really has to do with the transition into the fall in the later half of the year. And this is Monthly Tarot Magic. I always like to give a little bit of a caveat that for those of you who come to this show specifically interested in true crime, dark history, the paranormal content, our storytelling, our kind of immersive production style episodes, this is definitely not that. And I just want to fully respect that this is not always everybody's niche interest on this show and in this space, and that's so okay, like so beyond okay. And the reason that I say that, too, is also because this is actually going to be the last time that Monthly Tarot Magic is offered here on the main podcast feed the way that it has been off and on throughout the past couple years. It has been a staple of the show since the very beginning, but as I really dial in what I think my audience is most interested in, I think a lot of people come here specifically for the When Walls Can Talk content, the true storytelling episodes. That being said, there is a ton of people that are really, really interested in this. I get probably the most emails and feedback from across the whole show are based around these episodes, and just people sending me notes and letters about what it meant to them and how they are able to implement some of that work into their own lives. So don't panic. It's not gone. It's not going away. But from here, I want to make it for people who specifically would like to hear this, who would like to hear this message. So these episodes, Monthly Tarot Magic is going to be relocated now, starting in October, over on our Patreon. Patreon will always be linked in the show notes below, so I'll make sure that that's there for you. This is going to be for our $5 tier and above. So for $5 and above on Patreon, you'll get access to these hour-long collective readings. I'm also going to start coupling those with additional rituals, spell prompts, tarot spreads. And I know I've said that before in the past, but I'm really, really dedicating myself to making our Patreon community grow, kind of from nothing. So if you can spread the word, help people that might be interested or benefit from this type of content, these type of readings, have access to those by sharing it with your friends and family, that would be so amazing. And I'd be so, so grateful for that. I think $5 a month to me feels like a fairly great energetic exchange to get as much depth as I try to present and provide here. So, I think that's all on that. I just think it's a better place to house that content. And with that coupled as well, I have reopened my books on my website if you would like to purchase or secure a full-length personalized reading like the one that we're doing today just for yourself, whether it be for the month ahead, the year ahead, gift it to a friend for a birthday or for anything like that. My books are open on the website, whenwallscantalktarot.com. There's a page to book a reading with me. And for those who are listeners of the podcast, I've created a code for 10% off. Just use podcast when you check out. And if you want to go even deeper on a more personalized nature, I'd love to see you there. Second piece of information that's a little bit more timely to the date of this release. This is releasing September 1st, 2024. Just letting you know as well that Cinematic Secrets also comes out on September 2nd. And that will also be the last time that Cinematic Secrets finds its place on the When Walls Can Talk main feed. So make sure to follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts to make sure that you don't miss upcoming episodes if you're interested in the dark side of cinema. The dark sides behind Hollywood and secrets and stories that have never really been shared before. Or just go ahead and follow me on social media at When Walls Can Talk with underscores for spaces on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok, which is really starting to take off. On TikTok and Instagram lately, I've started this series each day where I release a short video talking about today in dark history, and that seems to be really engaging people, and they're really enjoying it. I also do today in planetary shenanigans if there's something going on, whether it be in the lunar cycles or the zodiac or anything like that. So yeah, follow along on our social media journey. I'm really committing this year to seeing what I can do with this platform and to reach more and more people who might benefit from the message that we've connected to as a community here at When Walls Can Talk. So tomorrow, Cinematic Secrets comes out. It's going to be exploring the life and legacy of Rock Hudson, especially circling this idea of what happens when someone's identity or personality is forced to be a dark secret and how that in and of itself can be a cinematic secret. And then the next one after that comes out on September 16th, and that one's going to be on Gone with the Wind. So, yeah. I think that's everything I have for housekeeping. I tried to keep it as short as I could just because there's a ton going on. And yeah, I think with that being said, it's time to jump into our energetic forecast and monthly tarot magic for September 2024. Let's go to some cards. All right, let's get started. So first and foremost, as always, I'd like to start with a little bit of our weather forecast for the month ahead, specifically in our energetic lunar cycle and zodiac cycles. So this is important today. The message is multi-layered for September. I'm going to do my very best to channel the message that I'm getting as clearly as I can. It's kind of overwhelming to me just a little bit because it's kind of complicated, but I'm going to do my best to be a vessel for this space. So if this is the only opportunity that you gift yourself to slow down, take some deep breaths, drop in, connect to the universe, I want to make sure that you capitalize and maximize this opportunity. So if you're listening somewhere where you can sit down, I encourage you to do so. Take some nice deep breaths. Slow yourself down a little bit. And if you feel the need or the urge to close your eyes at times, that's okay too, because this is your time to use however you want to. First thing coming up on our forecast on September 3rd, so just in a couple days, we have a new moon. New moons, as always, are a real good opportunity for beginning a new cycle and setting intentions around what that new cycle might mean or what it might look like. Specifically because this new moon is in Virgo, the energy of this new moon is going to be really focused in on Virgo energy, which is very practical. It's very grounded. It's very interested in self-improvement. So what you might find most beneficial during the cycle of this new moon is to find ways to get yourself organized, whether that be tidying up your house, working on and dialing in a project that's been kind of in your world or on your radar, finding ways to make healthier choices that you've been really desiring to make for yourself. Focusing on daily routines. So overall, Virgos are really, really deeply dedicated to personal growth. So are there habits that you want to build or refine for yourself in this next cycle? This is an opportunity to kind of clean the slate a little bit. If things feel like they've fallen by the wayside, gotten out of hand, gotten a little cluttered or messy, now is a real good time to clear off your desk, refresh your space, clean up your kitchen, redo your cabinets. And that I don't necessarily mean in the 3D way, the way I'm not saying now is necessarily a time to do spring cleaning. However, if that's a good way to physically manifest or implement some of that mentality into your brain, into your aura, that might be a really great way to do it. So new moon in Cancer, we're setting new intentions specifically around grounding, practicality. What do you need to grow in this next cycle? On September 8th, Saturn goes into opposition. That means this is the time where Earth, the Sun, and this particular planet are in direct alignment. Oftentimes, if you are an astrologer or someone interested in the stars or stargazing, it often means that these are the times when these particular planets can be easiest seen, literally sometimes just with a pair of binoculars. Saturn is very, very interested in structure. They're very interested in discipline, very Capricorn energy. Saturn encourages us to face challenges head on and find solutions to our problems or to our complications that have been presenting themselves to us. This is a great opportunity, this is September 8th, to use the nudge from Saturn to get serious about our goals. Take responsibility for the actions that it takes to make those goals happen. And so if you've been putting something off, if you've been avoiding something, this is a great opportunity with support from the universe to use that steady energy to get ahead on it, to get some effort into it, to really assert your will to make those things happen. And I'm going to get into that quite a bit more in our tarot segment. So I think what I'm seeing from the beginning of September all the way through to the 17th, which is the next segment that we're going to talk about, is this real Virgo clarity to identify goals, identify circumstances where we can reclaim control, clean the slate, and make some things happen for ourselves. Get yourself organized. Get yourself focused. I did that this week. I just got back from Podcast Movement in Washington, D.C., which was an incredible experience. And I got back and I felt like now is the time to sit down, get my calendar organized, clean the deck, make a strategy for myself, help myself succeed by focusing on the details, focusing on the places where I can take responsibility for making that happen. So the 1st of September through the 17th, we're going to have a lot of energetic support from the universe in order to accomplish these tasks. So if you feel a little bit more energy, if you feel a little bit more driven, more focused, more inspired perhaps, use that energy. Allow it to help you because things are going to feel a little bit different come the 17th of September. There's a lot happening on the 17th. It is the full harvest moon and it is also a partial lunar eclipse. So this time from then until the 22nd, which will be the next one I get to in just a minute, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Starting on the 17th, things might start to feel a little bit out of control and a little bit messy, and here's why. Lunar eclipses tend to bring in the mystery and bring in the shadow into our lives. Partial lunar eclipses and lunar eclipses in general sometimes also lead towards culminations of something, sacred endings to things. And these endings can feel a little bit unexpected and surprising and feel like they come out of nowhere, when in reality they are a result of a slow buildup to a moment in the lunar cycle where it's like, okay, this is done, we're complete with this, I'm helping you let this go. That, coupled with the full moon, which is full harvest moon is always the one that's closest to the autumnal equinox. And this is the full moon that farmers used to use over centuries. The bright light from that full moon would be the one that they would use to gather the last of the crops before the colder months into the later half of the year. And this goes back centuries. This is a cycle that farmers and agricultural people going back generations, tens of generations have done. And so this is a really good period to reflect on what we've achieved over the course of this year and what we've gathered so that we can harvest it and save it and prepare for the next season of growth, which will be on the other side of a bit of a cocooning, a wintering phase. These two things together can feel abrupt. In my perception of this, I think this is going to feel like a tower moment, which is a sacred destruction, where it feels like things that we've carried so close to the chest and so desperately held on to for a long time suddenly present themselves as no longer of value to us. They're no longer in our highest and best, and it's time to let those go and let those be dismantled sacredly with the impulses of the universe, the impulses of the moon. So from September 17th until September 22nd, it may feel, this dismantling might feel out of control. It may feel unprompted. It may feel perhaps even unwarranted. But I want you to root into the fact that this is with support from the universe and it's from sacred guidance from the moon. So it's going to be okay, I promise. September 22nd, we arrive at the fall equinox, which is the beginning of Libra season. It's also Mabon, which is almost our witchy Thanksgiving, so to speak, which is again rooted in that the history of the harvest, the history of the culmination of the growing season. This is when that darker tower portal that I've been perceiving ends. So it's going to be from September 17th until September 22nd. And this is a season, Libra season is always based around balance, harmony, beauty, and it's all about finding that sweet spot between work and play. And Libra season is ruled by Venus, which is the planet of love and devotion, which really connects this to this idea of recommitting to what we perceive as beautiful about life. And that'll be different for every single one of us. What connects us to the beauty of what it is to be alive in a human body on Earth at this time? Even the little things can fall. Like I'm talking about like a perfectly brewed cup of coffee. Allowing those beautiful moments. It's very Empress energy, actually. Empress is all about this idea of, can you allow in the beauty and the abundance that's around us, even if it's in the tiny things, like just a beautiful stream of light coming through the window, really stopping to enjoy the moment where your cat falls asleep in your lap and is purring. Stuff that we often, in our material rush and our desire to pursue everything that's on our calendar or whatever that might look like for all of us, we might overlook some of that, the things that make life beautiful. So this is going to be all about finding harmony for the rest of the month, whether that be harmony in our schedules, harmony in our emotions, harmony in our relationships. It's always about the pursuit of peace and balance. And so this is, to kind of take a step back and look at this again, on the whole, this is kind of the forecast that I'm seeing. This huge Virgo drive to focus, to realign, to find structure, discipline, clear the deck, really get clear on what it is that we're wanting, which may feel a little bit combated by this tower moment of culminations, endings, things falling away, being almost torn out of our hands a little bit from the 17th to the 22nd. And then in that clearing, that sacred harvest, that clearing of the fields, that taking out what remains in the earth, that's done its job for the year, we then get to quietly focus on what does balance and harmony look like moving forward. So it's almost its own mini growth and death cycle all within 1 month, which I think is going to make things feel a little bit complicated. But I honestly feel fired up about it because I'm already feeling this Virgo energy that I'm talking about. I already feel like I want to get super clear on what is my routine for creating this content, for providing to my audience, for helping my show, my tarot business, helping all of it grow, reach new people who could benefit from this. I think tapping into that a little bit might help people. And you don't have to be an entrepreneur or a small business owner or any of those things to capitalize on this. This can be like, how am I restructuring the way I do chores around my home? How am I restructuring the way that I get back to people on my phone when I'm at the office and I get home and there's phone calls and text messages? Like that level of analysis around how do I find what makes me feel most focused and charged and energized, rather than just letting it all sit there and then finding ourselves a couple days or hours later feeling overwhelmed and anxious and drowning and whatever that thing is for you. So now that we kind of have a rough roadmap of this roller coaster, so to speak, this building up, this little bit of a drop off as things change and then start to rebuild again into Libra season, let's go to cards. So tarot. The first card that I pulled was a card for me that's going to speak to the beginning of this journey, which is that new moon in Virgo energy. Let's go deeper on this. So the card that I pulled is Magician. Magician is card 1 of the tarot, the one that directly follows card 0 being the Fool. Fool being the protagonist of the tarot journey. In my opinion, the Fool card introduces us to the character who goes through the entire journey. So to tap into one's magic, which is very much what I feel like this tapping into the Virgo energy in this new moon is going to be like, it's tapping into our own inner magic. It takes a conscious choice. The Magician is often paired with the High Priestess, which comes directly after. It's card 2 of the tarot. I think that in those two cards, the Fool makes 2 choices. Number 1, they make the conscious decision to engage with the energy present in their journey through the tarot. And number 2, the High Priestess, is about the subconscious and the unconscious elements of tapping into the magic of the tarot, the magic of the universe. But it's interesting here that in this particular spread, what's happening is, if you want to take the journey that I've described so far, it is going to require a conscious choice on your part. And given that this card is in position 1, it is the first choice for anything else to be able to occur. So if you want to go through this, and I guarantee you it's going to be worth it, and I'll tell you why as we keep going, you have to make the choice and say, yes, I would like to go on this journey. Yes, new moon in Virgo, I would like to tap into your energy. Yes, I give permission to everything that's going to come, including the sacred culminations later in the month. Yes, yes, yes. The Magician represents the channel that exists within all of us, through which energies, impulses, the universe, and just sacred truths flow. In the Magician, nothing about what is being presented as capable of being channeled. It's a signal, hey, like, there is the ability for things to come through, but it can't happen without us. And it can't happen without us saying yes, and us making the conscious decision, I'd like to go on this journey. So, the Magician, I think, could best be described as that moment during the process of creation, whether you're a musician or a painter or sit down in front of a microphone like this to record. That moment that I think is really well described in the movie Soul, where you feel like you leave the body and you look back at the things that you create, or the way that you organized your home, or the way that you, or whatever it is, and you look back and are like, wow, the whole of what was created feels better than the sum of its parts, or I feel like what came through me is better than what I personally am capable of doing on my own. That magical feeling, or like if you're a theater kid and you completed a show and it was just, especially if you're like in high school or something, or in college, where everybody's talented on their own, but then somehow when you look back at what was created all together, it feels even greater than the sum of the talents of the people. It's that feeling. We are capable of channeling, creating, connecting to truths from outside of us that feel, when you look back at them, greater than something we think that we are actually capable of doing. That is a magical experience. That is the Magician. But it's referencing us. It's referencing the fact that it comes through us. And the only way that it does that is by us saying yes. The Magician has 4 tools on its table, and their tools reflect the 4 suits of the rest of the tarot, which also connect to 4 major and perhaps the 4 elements of what it is to work with humanness in a sacred way. So that being your energy, wands, your thoughts and your thought space, swords, your emotions, your intuition, cups, and your behaviors and connection to your soul and connection to what makes life sacred, pentacles. It is those four things together. The magician encompasses all of them. Are we willing to allow our resources, our intuition, our connection to be this channel? So the truth of the universe, or the truth for you even, wants to come forward in the beginning of this month. Do you say yes to allow it? If so, I recommend making a ritual around it. Write it down, journal about it, pull cards around it, create a spell for it, meditate on it. Really, really lock that in your subconscious mind that I am saying yes. You're also allowed to say no. That's okay. Like if you have a very busy month ahead and you really can't afford to have your shit rocked a little bit later on, which I feel is what's going to feel like it happens a little bit on September 17th in a very beautiful and very sacred way, you are also allowed to say, you know what? I'm going to come back to you in October. I have a lot on my plate right now. But for everybody else that's like me, where as I was doing this spread, preparing for this reading, I was like, you know what? I'd never swear, but you know what? Fuck yes, let's go. Then really lock that in for yourself. Ritualize it. Meditate on it. Make it connect. Because your body and your brain is going to fight you on this, and I'll tell you why as we keep going. But let me move on. The next card that I pulled was I wanted to get some sort of sense of what the shadow side of this magician moment could be, because everything like this feels super optimistic and super positive and super exciting, but there's always a shadow side. There's always a challenge to this experience that we might perceive, or that our brain might latch onto as an excuse as to why to not do this. I pulled Four of Swords. So swords, as always, we've talked about this a lot, is our connection to our animal ancestors, our brain, that it will never be rid of it. Whether it's along for the ride and helping us out or making life challenging, we're never going to get rid of it. So our mind is a tool, and it has the power to be used either as medicine or as poison, based solely on the way that we choose to work with it, the way that we choose to be kind of the pet owner. The way that we choose to parent our own mind will decide whether or not our mind is used to our benefit or to our detriment. So I think the shadow side is going to be forcing ourselves to remain focused. There is a portal being opened and being created through this experience of this entire month, not just the front half that we've been talking about. There is a portal here. If you can stay focused and really commit to what this opportunity is, you will come out the other side a different person. This will change you. You won't come back from what you experience in the month of September the same person, but only if you allow it. Only if we choose to parent our brain enough to force ourselves to stay focused on the here and now, what's going on, and don't get distracted by the fears and anxieties of, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know if I like being out of control. You may find yourself in the process of this journey feeling like you stand apart from the people around you, that you're different, or that you see the world around you in a very different way. And that can be a terrifying thing. It may even feel lonely at moments. But don't allow your impulse to trick you into running away from this opportunity, because if you run away, you miss the beauty that's capable here. There is a portal available to every single one of us to change. And you can say no. You can say no. And if there's a part of you in your heart that says this portal's not for you right now, I believe that to be wholly valid and perfectly understandable. But if you are like me, where you're ready for a change, if you felt blocked, stifled, bored, stressed, use this to your opportunity, use this to your advantage, but that's also going to require that you play an active role in tending to your mind, which will probably have an issue with some of this, because it's going to feel very rushed. It's going to feel a little bit out of control. It's going to feel a little bit like you're ramping up that clicking sound as a roller coaster climbs to the top. That's what the beginning of this month is going to feel like. It's going to feel a little like the ground drops out for a few days, starting on the 17th until the 22nd. Luckily, it's not a long period, But that's when you throw your hands in the air, trust the universe to catch you as you go down, and believe that everything that's happening is in your highest and best. So that's kind of the new moon energy that we're talking about. So the next card that I pulled, I wanted us to be prepared for everything, because I am a Capricorn rationalist and everything about this sounds terrifying, thrilling, beyond thrilling. Like, I would love to come out the other side of this month feeling like a completely different, rejuvenated and recharged person. But I have a lot of doubts and I have a lot of stresses. So I pulled our next card, which I wanted to reflect what will be the biggest challenge that we face in this process. And that is Nine of Wands. So we're going to talk about boundaries for a minute. And I can feel people collectively rolling their eyes, both in a sense of, oh God, not again, and also in the sense of, okay, at me, why don't you? So boundaries. Our boundaries are what separates our thoughts, feelings, and actions from those of others. Just kind of in a general definition in the way that we're talking about it here. So we can often find ourselves wishing we were more flexible or durable or unfazed by other people, specifically when we are defending our boundaries and making choices about, this works for me, this doesn't work for me, I'm not available to this, I am available to that. But when we choose to ignore those boundaries in order to try to tend to the emotions of people around us, or not make them feel upset or hurt people or have people not understand us when we have our boundaries up, what actually happens is that it disturbs or diminishes the project that we're working on. So if you're not willing to be proud of and defend your boundaries as something integral and sacred to this process, it will more than likely pull you out of the journey that I've been talking about, because you're going to be so concerned about everybody else's feelings and how they perceive what it is that you're doing, that it's going to break you from the connection to this portal journey that we're talking about. So I can't tell you enough how much this is going to be the biggest challenge you're going to face this month, but it's also going to be the most important piece when it comes to, like, what is my homework here? What am I supposed to do? If you let your boundaries be weakened in order to babysit the people around you and how they feel and take responsibility for their feelings or their emotions, none of this is going to matter anymore. And that's not meant to be a threat. And it's not meant to be, it's just, this is how this works. If we become so focused on what everybody else needs and internalize how they're reacting to our choices, we're no longer in the driver's seat. We're pulled out of the car and we're watching the car drive on without us. Again, hot take, but if somebody has an issue with our boundaries, it has absolutely nothing to do with us whatsoever, nor do we have to take responsibility for it. If anything, it is a reminder to them in a painful way of how limited their boundaries are, and perhaps they're even jealous of the fact that we're able to champion ourselves and advocate for ourselves in that way. Or they've just never experienced a boundary before in their life and legitimately don't know what to do with us. But that is not where this ends, because there's more to it here. What is a balanced boundary? In the Eight of Wands, the card, the traditional artwork from the Smith Rider-Waite, which I rarely reference because I believe that a card should be able to exist independently of its artwork, but I think in many cases there's so much nuance and detail in the artwork from the original tarot that is worthy of acknowledgement. In it, we see an individual standing next to what looks like almost a little wall that they're putting up of wands. But there's big gaps in it. It's a very flimsy, it's not like an ironclad wall. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it does make me think a bit about what a balanced boundary actually looks like. So in my opinion, if a boundary is too flimsy, if it exists but it's not defended and not established enough, we still spend all of our time scanning the horizon, awaiting for an incoming threat that we have to ward off in order to defend our boundaries. That's what it looks like and feels like if you have a boundary, but it's not strong. It's porous. It lets things through still, so you, as the individual, still have to kind of serve as a foot soldier to defend it. On the other hand, a boundary that's too strong makes intimacy and connection with other people's borderline impossible. So if you find yourself like hermiting away in your room constantly and realizing that all of your friends, all of your connections, you're completely alone, or people are finding you intimidating, and that could be a boundary that's too strong. You've pushed people out too much. So what does an ideal boundary look like? Ideally, you want a boundary that should allow you to have a break from always standing guard. Your boundaries should be firm and visible to people on a metaphorical and metaphysical, kind of mile away, but it shouldn't make you unwelcoming. It shouldn't make you cold to people. It should be a boundary that allows you to focus your energy on your own restoration and growth, of which there's probably going to be a lot this month. That's why I think boundaries are so important. You are going to be changing. You are going to be evolving. And you need a boundary to help distill out the things that are not meant for you, the energy you're not meant to take on, because everything in you is going to want to do that. So boundaries can be very distressing at first for those who are not used to it. And I think every one of us can probably think of somebody in their life that's profoundly good at it. And it can make them feel a little bit unreachable at times. I think some people might have that perception of me just because I tend to exercise my boundaries around my phone. I choose if and when to respond to messages, to emails. I certainly am not trying to be irresponsible or unrealistic in the sense of just avoiding emails that I don't feel like it, because it doesn't work that way either. But I also know that I won't be my best self if I just pick up the phone and answer somebody immediately just because they reached out, especially if I'm in the middle of the flow of creation or in the middle of taking a moment of quiet for myself. I respect my boundary enough to know that that time is sacred and important, and that message will be there to get back to as quickly as I can. That's kind of an example of where one of my boundaries are. I learned that during COVID when I really, really enjoyed the fact that my phone was borderline silent all day. And then returning to regular life, especially a creator, we get probably 500 plus notifications a day, and I've even turned off some of my social media ones. And it might make you feel like you never have a second to breathe or to just be, and you kind of lose sight of who you are as a person behind the creation machine. And I'm speaking just to my experience, but I think we all have one that's similar. So it can be very distressing to have the feeling of oh my God, they're going to be so mad at me because I'm taking 2 hours before I answer this text message, or I'm taking an hour or two before I do XYZ, or however that appears in your own life, in your boundaries. So it might feel distressing, and the reality is people in our life might push back, they might threaten those boundaries, they might throw a temper tantrum, but ultimately, what's going to happen if you stay true to those is that both of you are going to benefit, because not only are you gifting yourself the space to restore, to grow, to change, to become a better person when you do show up to those people or to those things in your life, but it also is ultimately going to eventually make them feel safe too, because they're going to have a pretty clear understanding of what to expect from you. And that can be really grounding. I think of the same people who I know who have really firm boundaries. I also know exactly what my relationship with them looks like. I know exactly how and when I'll hear from them, how they'll respond to situations. It makes me feel comfortable with those people. Now, I want to talk about this portal specifically that I've been talking about between the 17th and the 22nd. This tower portal that I'm personally naming it that. It's certainly not that in a broad tarot sense, but I'm labeling it that just because I think that's the card that most connects to what I think is going to happen there. The card that I pulled to help us understand this a little bit more is the Six of Swords, which I think is a perfect card for this. Breaking patterns is hard. Releasing things that no longer serve us the way we've kind of been or will be forced to do during that portal is hard. And usually we're going to find that there's a small army of emotions within us trying desperately to keep those things in place, even as the universe, the moon, your spirit guides, your ancestors, your whatever, however you identify to this idea of the universe, while those things are saying nope, let me have, let go, please, let me have it. There's going to be a small army of emotions inside of us subconsciously that are fighting desperately to keep that thing in place. So what we need to do through this, our homework for this portal specifically, is we need to have a willingness to experience the feeling of that loss. point blank period. But we also need to be willing to experience that feeling in a way that we haven't been willing to do before. We never, as human beings, we never go on a new route. We never choose a new path. Like, it's never something that we just wake up one day and we're like, you know what? I feel like breaking patterns today. If you do, like, kudos to you. You're amazing. Teach me your ways, please. But in general, we don't like roll over one day and you're like, you know what? I just feel like changing everything in my life. I feel like letting go. And I think there are people, though, now that I think about it, there are people who reach that point in their life where there's really no longer an option. And those are the people who like throw all their stuff away, sell their home, move into a trailer, quit their job, and just change everything. And that's I think a little bit of a different experience. I think what I'm talking about this month is much more micro. It's much smaller scale. But it's rare that we make that choice on our own. It's rare that we say one day, like, you know what? I just feel like experiencing fear and anxiety and guilt and terror around changing the way that I respond to and interact with the world. We just don't do that. So if you're afraid of this change, or if you're afraid of the challenge that I'm describing, first of all, you're on to something, and there's something precious here for you to chase. So it is not a bad thing to feel anxiety or nerves around this portal. Let me remind you of something in case this is the first time you've ever heard a tarot reading from me. I do not read the tarot specifically as a way to divine the future, and tarot in general cannot predict anything because the universe is never fixed. Every choice that we make in every moment of our life changes the way that the future goes. So what I'm saying here, I'm not predicting that your relationship is going to end. I'm not predicting that you're going to get a divorce. I'm not predicting you're going to lose your job. I'm not predicting you're going to lose your car or your home. Or I'm not. Tower moments are sacred and small, generally. I mean, I've experienced big towers too. But what I'm talking about here is it's small things. It's like, I'll give you an example perhaps. Your tower portal between the 17th and the 22nd could perhaps be something like, I am through with the storyline that I'm not good enough. And there's going to be sacred support from the universe to take that story away. I'm through with the story that I'm not intuitive. Other people are, but I'm not. That could be what your tower portal is. I'm through with the idea that the only way that I bring income in for myself is through traditional corporate 9-to-5 methods or a traditional material, earthly focused job. Perhaps that's a story that needs to go away in order for you to shift into something new, something creative, something out of the box, something that makes you feel alive. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find my way out of this safety net that I've created for myself, that the only way to exist is work in the corporate world from 9 to 5. I will never be able to support myself with my tarot. I'll never be able to support myself with my podcasts, and it's a fever dream at best to think otherwise. That's the story that I'm trying to get rid of. And it's hard. Every ounce of my body fights back against that story, against allowing that to be possibly true, which creates a block from allowing the opportunities that could change that story to come through. So it requires my willingness and my choice to engage, my choice to face into the fear of, oh my God, this transition could be impossible. That's just an example. Like, I want to be clear that I'm not saying that the stocks are going to crash between the 17th and the 22nd of September. I don't read tarot like that. That's not how it works, at least not from me. So perhaps if that's how you want to engage with the tarot, I might not be the reader for you, and that's okay. That's more than okay. It's absolutely okay. So I'm asking you to engage in a much quieter, much more emotional space. Yeah, portal. Breaking patterns is difficult, and we're rarely going to want to just choose that on our own. So it's important that we give ourselves the support of facing in, even if we don't want to. Last card that I want to talk about is the card that's going to represent the Libra gateway. So the gateway as we walk through into Libra season and into the beginning of next month. And that's going to be 10 of Wands. So There's a lot here, but I'm going to try to distill it down just because we're already at 45 minutes. Go figure, me. Well done, me. Everything is limitations, And so and limitations and boundaries kind of exist in the same world, but have a very different tonality to them. So in this gateway, as it feels like things might have been taken away and our fields have been cleared, our harvest has been gathered, and the slate is blank yet again. Once again, the slate is blank, and it's time to find that harmony and balance as we move into the back half of the year, or the back quarter of the year. How do I explore my own limitations so that I'm being true to myself? Libras really, really want to find balance in ways that then make them feel true to themselves, what they desire, what they truly desire, not just what they desire in their minds. How do I know if I've had too much? If this is overwhelming? How do I know if I haven't taken on enough? People like me who overexert themselves typically end up feeling two overarching emotions about 98% of the time, and we fall into one of two buckets. Either one, resentment for saying yes to too many things, or guilt for saying no to things. Rarely do we find ourselves in the middle, or just proud of and content with the choices that we've made. That's also a sign of boundary work. But boundaries and limitations, I think, again, exist in a very similar framework. In Ten of Wands, in the Tarot for the Holy Spectrum, that is my deeply, deeply beloved deck, and I'll make sure that I link that in the show notes. I've used every edition that's ever come out. It was created by Chase Voorhees in partnership with the teachings of my own tarot teacher, Lindsay Mack, for Tarot for the Wild Soul and Tarot for the Wild Soul podcast, which if you're interested in reading or learning about tarot, that is the teacher that I would direct you to first. Or if you don't want to do or can't financially afford to do coursework right now, the book that I would say go get is, I would tell you to get two books. One is Tarot for Change by Jessica Dorr, and one is 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Pollack. Those are the two books that you need to get started. Anyway, in the artwork of the Ten of Wands, specifically in the deck that I just mentioned, but also in the same in Smith Rider-Waite, actually, come to think about it, our Fool, if you want to keep that protagonist story going, has 10 wands on their shoulder, and the weight is so much, and they're also spewing in every direction, which I can imagine is very difficult to keep balanced and keep from dropping things. And their head is focused on the ground because that's all they can do to keep focused on making sure that these 10 wands on their shoulder stay there and don't fall to the ground. Rather than examining in an intelligent, emotionally mature way the burdens that are on our shoulders and critically asking, are these ones for me? We avoid. And we don't look at our limitations of like, how did I get to the point where I have 10 wands on my shoulder, 5 of which I shouldn't actually be carrying at all. This month, before we arrived at the Libra Gateway, we learned to let things go. We learned to put things down with support from the universe, who said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and try to take this from you. Please let me. As you move into Libra season, don't pick it back up again. Just don't. Don't do it. Don't pick up something that you've already gone through the challenge and the burden and the heartache and the growth and the blessing and the healing of letting go. Don't turn around and pick it back up again. When we have guilt for saying no to things, it's conditioning. That's all it is. It's conditioning that's rooted in the idea that we're responsible for other people's feelings. We're responsible for how other people feel, and it's just not true. We found something new this month. We found something new. Pick up the new thing, or pick up the space that we now have created a vacuum of opportunity to develop further. Like, say, for instance, let me illustrate kind of what I was talking about for me. If between September 17th and 22nd, I find that there's a bunch of stuff outside of the creation of this podcast, the creation of my own passion project. If that were to fall away, now would be the opportunity and the gateway into Libra season to throw myself wholeheartedly into that. Find the balance of where that brings me harmony, balance, joy, connection to the deepest desires of my own heart, rather than just immediately going and picking up another job just because conditioning tells me I need to, and guilt tells me that I need to. That's just an illustration, and it will show up in a bajillion different ways for a bajillion different people. Yes, that is the scientific term. Very educated of me. We found something new this month. We cleared out things to give space for something new, or to allow something that's been around the room to grow. Pick that up instead, and don't let it go. That's our reading. That's our reading for this month. It's a lot. It's like the plot of an entire novel in 1 month. And don't be intimidated. You are the main character. You are driving this car no matter what. Now, you have the opportunity to decide, do you want to invite spirit into the passenger seat? Do you want to let it be the navigator? Do you want it to let it tell you what turns to take, or what highways to avoid, and what pitfalls in the road might distract you or disrupt you? Do you want to have that conversation, or don't you? And that's not a challenge. That is something that you can sit down and decide for yourself. I can't decide it for you. This reading can't make everything that I've said happen. If it sounds like too much, you have the ability to say thank you. Not this time, I'll see you next month. This is completely up to you. Now, everything that I've talked about today is a very generalistic approach. I think there's a lot of specificity. That a lot of people will connect to, but there's also a lot of this that also is very general and is very kind of geared to help and reach and touch as many people as possible. If you need help taking this reading, taking this understanding and going deeper and making it more personal and more specific to you, again, I remind you, there is a link in the show notes to book a reading with me. If a limitation is financial, hopefully having a 10% off might help just a little bit. And you can use code podcast to get 10% off your reading. Again, I'll remind you one more time that this is the last time that this collective reading is going to be available here on the main feed of When Walls Can Talk, the podcast. This feed will get very, very specific and focused on the stories that we love telling, with occasional bonus content. But I want this to exist somewhere special for my listeners and for all those that support me. So starting this coming October and every month going forward, these monthly Tarot Magic episodes will exist exclusively on Patreon. And again, that link will be in the show notes as well to join us. Join us at the $5 tier or above, just $5 a month, and you'll get access to an hour-long kind of deep dive on what I see coming up ahead. So, I leave you with all of that information because I know this was a biggie. This was a complicated one. I, for one, am so freaking excited to see how this goes. And I would love to hear about what this journey looks like for you. What was your tower portal? What was your rebuild? What was taken away from you? What did you find in the first half of this month that was deeply inspiring? How did you implement the organization and the practicality and the driven discipline of just really focusing on what is on your desk? What do you want to be on your desk now? Shoot me an email, jeremy@whenwallscantalktarot.com, or DM me on Instagram @whenwallscantalk with underscores for spaces, or join us on Facebook on our Facebook group. It's been a little quiet recently, but if you have something you want to talk about, start a discussion, get people talking. I will be more than happy to join in and share my takes and my thoughts. I want this to become a community. I want this to become not just me channeling to the best of my ability in a vacuum. I want to hear from you. What does this mean to you? How do you connect to this? Does this reading feel spot on? But I also want to hear if you're like, you know what, this is out, you're out to lunch. I don't get it. I don't connect to it. This doesn't make any sense. Let's talk. Let's go deeper. Maybe there's a more nuanced take to this that's meant for you. So anyway, I have loved having monthly Tarot Magic here on the main feed, and I'm deeply grateful to all of my listeners that found them useful and helpful. Come with me to Patreon. Let's keep this going. Let's grow this into something bigger and better than ever. But with that being said, it has been an honor. Have a wonderful, wonderful Labor Day weekend. And don't forget that you have Cinematic Secrets available right here on the main feed one final time tomorrow. So I will see you there.